I'm Albert Lionel, and I want to talk a little bit about ChatGPT. Now, when ChatGPT first came out, generative AI is a term, or large language models. When we talked about ChatGPT, everyone is paranoid about everyone's going to be cheating. And if you search, there's articles about it. There's articles how you catch cheaters. There's articles about how you do the different thing. Of course, everyone's just going to have it write its own essay. The interesting thing is it's very similar to when Wikipedia came out and when the internet came out. These were the same arguments. And what happened is educators had to really focus on how to teach people how to use it. So there's a learning curve, and it's up to us educators on how to teach people how do you use this tool to help you study. In fact, it's actually really bad for copying. People are getting wrong answers left and right, and they don't know they're getting wrong answers. So what we want to do is we want to explore how we can use this tool to build a study aid. And if you know the correct prompt, there's actually a lot of things you can do with it. Now, in this video, I'm actually only going to cover a few things just because there's too much to cover in every video, and certain videos I'll even bring this back up. But in this video, I want to do 3 prompts to help you succeed. 3 prompts to help you study. The first is to use ChatGPT or Bard or any generative AI to build supplemental material. You've gone to a lecture, you've got your notes, but you really want to review it. Another powerful tool is coding reviews. Coding reviews is a powerful tool in computer science. Often it's done in industry. You write code, someone reviews your code, you have this back and forth process. But that's really hard to do unless you have aid. Quizzing or retesting is arguably one of the best study tools. So we're going to give you a prompt that can help you set up a quizzing session with ChatGPT so you can better test yourself on material. So let's talk about adding supplemental materials first. So I've got this prompt here, and I say topic, and then I specify its role. I say you are an expert in this topic. We're going to explore this prompt later, a little bit in more detail so you can see it more clear. But I present this prompt, and I say, hey, I want to learn about recursion. I'm a beginner level, so go ahead and talk about it. It gives me the details, and it goes through each of the things I asked it. Here's a code example, and here's this coherent concept, and here's some things to be considered or concerned about or to watch for. And then I'm looking at this watch for, I'm like, oh, what's about this performance consideration? What's going on here? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And so I've got this opportunity to interact with my supplemental material, to interact with my notes that I'm building and saying, hey, can you give me a bit more information on this? So then I can say, all right, give me a bit more information. It is better to talk normally, as long as you're not using too much slang, and you do need to use mostly complete sentences. And I say mostly, it will take, if you take off a few words, you'll figure out what you want, but you do need to actually say this is what you want. So I'm saying, hey, tell me a little bit more on this, and it'll give me some examples. Interesting thing is this is the average answer. These models are trained on information across the entire network, across the internet, and we're only getting the average answer in everything that we're doing. So that's a critical thing to be aware of. So here's a prompt. I have topic, recursion in Python, beginner. And I say, here's my topic. You are the expert. Please help me understand this topic by providing information. I can also add additional prompts. Provide 5 study resources for me, and it'll provide maybe websites for me to go ahead and study with. So it's giving me these ideas, and it's adding to my supplemental material for the course. That's powerful. It's saying, here's your information. You know a little bit. I'm going to give you some information knowing you only know a little bit and go from there. So you want to ask clarifying questions, add more to it. Sort of want to make it this dialogue going back and forth on how can I better understand things. And save your sessions to your notes. Remember, your notes really should be a journal documenting your learning experience. This is part of your learning experience. So go ahead and save that out, and you're adding more supplemental material to be successful. So what else can we go ahead and do with this? We're adding all this material. What about my code? Can I have it review my code for me? A code review is powerful. I want to be able to provide code, say, you're a code reviewer, tell me what I did right and tell me what I need to improve upon. And so I give it this prompt, and it's going through this prompt, and it's providing this information. It's reading back what it did. So I can say, hey, oh, yeah, it is doing what I think it should be doing. That's great. Or it's also saying, hey, here's something you're missing. And it's right. I wrote this code, but I didn't check for null. I didn't say what happens when they give me an empty array, or what happens when my size is 0. Well, size is 0, it sort of filters out. But what happens when they give me an empty array? My code's going to blow up. So I didn't check for this edge case. Now, usually it gives sample for that code. In this case, it didn't. So I said, hey, give me a sample for this code. So not only is it giving me a sample for the code, it's also pointing out you didn't do such a great job on comments. So here's a commented version. It's still using my code at its heart with maybe the spacing fixed. And it's adding this stuff. So I knew it worked. I gave it to it and I tried it. Another thing you can do is try this on Bard. Take a look at it and say, all right, Bard, what do you think about it? What do you think about my code? Give me feedback. I wrote this code. I want to say, hey, this is great code. Tell me what I did awesome. Tell me what I did wrong. And suddenly it gives me a very different answer. And yes, its answer works. It's sort of creating variables that it doesn't need. It's doing a while loop. The for loop is a bit more efficient in how it's creating things. Oh, and it didn't null check. So it didn't actually catch the error that I had null. My first instinct is I got this and I want to say, this is actually sort of a bad answer. It was simple enough to just do the for loop. I'm adding complexity by trying to do the while and adding extra variables for having to count both directions. So I sort of want to say no, I decided not to do that. I did look around to see where the regenerate was, and then I remembered it's at the top right where I can view other drafts. And so here's other drafts that generated. It's still really liking that while loop, but this case it did give me the null check. But it's also creating variables that I don't need. What's this mid pointer? It doesn't even get used in a code, but it's creating it. And it says, here's this, oh, and you want to add a null check when you go on down, and it'll have the no check that I'll add a little bit below that. So it's done the same thing, but it's still got a pointer. Yes, maybe it'll pass auto-grader tests. Probably won't pass the manual tests. The manual code review, they'll say this is not great. Now there is a powerful feature in Bard that is very useful, particularly with Python. If I'm trying to have my code reviewed in Python, and once I'm in reviewer mode, I can just type in code, or probably better copy and paste it, because typing in, you have to hit Shift Enter, and you don't have any of your auto-completes or coloring. But we have this Python there. I'm saying, review this code that I'm writing. What we will see is it will once again give me probably not the best answer, but it gives me an answer. And once it gives the answer, it's going to recommend you can run this in CodeLab. So I'm going to give you an answer and you can go ahead and run it, and you can have this interactive session where you can play with the code. That is a strength of Bard that ChatGPT doesn't have, though with plugins they may be changing that soon. But that is a strength that they don't have. But the code answer it gives is still sort of questionable. Why am I building a range? Ideally, you don't use index unless you specifically have a reason, or you already have that. By building a range and building more objects just to grab an object, it's not really as efficient as people would think for the suggestion it's giving. So code reviews, specify its role. What is the role of this program? It is a code reviewer. You say what you want, provide feedback on the code snippet. Tell me what I did well, and if anything could use improvement. Before you do it, make sure it works properly. This should be code that you've been tested. You know it's working, you understand the logic behind it. And then you want more feedback on it. You want it to tell you, did you do it well? Did it do it badly? Are there anything you're missing? Is there a better way to do it? Is there some feature you didn't know about that you could use as a language? But it's meant to give you feedback and sort of act as the average expert. And I say average expert because a true code reviewer tends to be an expert, tends to be a mentor. In this case, it is an average expert saying, this is what I think. Because it's an average expert, compare the results, compare your two different experts, whether it's Bard or ChatGPT or whatever other tool you're asking to review your code. But you have this opportunity to review your code and go through there. And always don't trust the answer. Don't copy and paste. Don't take blind answers. Don't have it write its code for you, because we just saw it could be wrong. And I wasn't even trying to generate a wrong answer. I thought it would give me roughly the same answer between the two different services, just maybe reword a little bit on the feedback, and it gave me two completely different answers. So be aware of what you get. It's not always correct. And you want to be very careful about it, that you evaluate what it does, you debug what it does. You just don't assume that what's being generated is perfect and flawless. Now let's talk about the strongest tool, quizzing. You can start an interactive quiz session with ChatGPT. You have to be careful in your wording. I specify the topic, I specify the questions, I specify I want it to wait until I can go ahead and do something. And then I have to give my response. once I give my response, it gives feedback on my response. And since I said, ask me 2 questions, it's going to immediately ask another question. And so I give feedback on this question. In this case, it's a coding question. So I'll go ahead and code it. In this case, I'm just looking for numbers. So using range was a good thing to use in this case. And I print it on out. Notice it's a relatively simple one. It's not going to ask a huge detailed one, but a simple one. It's going to evaluate it. It's going to give me feedback. It's going to reword what I did. So maybe what I have going in my mind is what it's doing. I'm also going to say, hey, maybe you can actually give me some code that I can evaluate so I can better understand reading someone else's code. I can be the code reviewer and you can evaluate my review. Amazing practice. And so it's going to give me code. I'm going to go ahead and review it. I'm going to give feedback on it. And I'll go through this feedback and say, this is what it is. Yes, you want to type it out, or you can use a speech to text to go ahead and fill it on out, but you need to be complete in the wording. If I'm too short in the wording, it's going to say, hey, I missed all these things when my brain is thinking about it. So it's really about what's getting in your brain as you read this code written down so you can confirm what you're thinking is correct about it. And it'll give feedback on what I'm thinking. It may just reiterate it if I did a good job, but it's giving me thinking. It's pointed out that I didn't really mention the plus equals at all, and that's fine. And then I can say, hey, give me another question. Doesn't do what I want, so I actually need to be more specific and say, give me another question itself, or say, please give me a question for the quizzing. I want you to keep quizzing me. And now it actually gives me a quiz question. And I can keep repeating this until I'm done. Maybe I set a timer for 20 minutes. And with this 20-minute timer, I will sit here and I'll study, I'll quiz on a certain topic, and I will further my understanding. There's a paper out there that says the 10 best top advantages of quizzing. And believe it or not, evaluation is the least of them. When we have this prompt, say loops in Python beginner level, number of questions, completely optional. At least every other question should include evaluating code. I added that in there because I wanted evaluating code, but maybe you don't. So you can leave that out if you don't need it on there. What is important is you begin with asking questions, waiting for my response, and then asking the question and repeat. Else what will happen is it just tries to give you the answer. You ask a question, it's like, here's some questions, what are the answers? And it's really sort of frustrating. So you really need to be very clear that you want it to wait for your response. Bard struggled with this. I used this prompt in Bard and I never waited for my response. It just trying to give me the answer every time, which ruins this idea of forced retrieval. And the most powerful study technique is called retesting, this active retrieval process, in which an answer is not in front of me and I'm forced to come up with an answer. And your brain's going to respond by saying, I'm going to order this information. I know this is important. You're asking me to recall it. So now you're starting to form the pathways you need for long-term retrieval. It is also providing different questions than I may have thought to ask. So it's looking at the problem in its own unique way, providing questions to me. And so I now have a study tutor. 28 minutes a night, 3 nights a week, I can sit down and say, quiz me on this topic. I want to understand it better. But for me to understand it better, I need to force recall into my brain. As I force that recall as I practice, as I build this habit of practice, this is an incredibly powerful tool to do that. So let's review. We have supplemental materials we can do. We have code review and we have quizzing. Of those, quizzing is the most powerful. Code review is also useful as long as you're comparing and contrasting and being very careful with it. And supplemental materials is just helpful. Sort of helps saving us searches, but you also still need to search and fill that in. Disclaimer, for all the instructors out there and all the students out there, do not copy and paste. It's the same as copying from Wikipedia. It's plagiarism. Really, don't have it generate your code for you. If you do that all the time, you're going to end up with wrong answers and you're not going to understand it. You want to understand it. Yes, in industry, generative AI tools are being used. But the people using them have an idea of, ooh, that's really bad code it just generated, or they should have that idea. Or, oh, it is missing this. So you really want to be at that level before you just let it generate things. So question, question, question. You say trust no one, really it's trust no generative AI. So question what you get, make sure you understand it. Don't just have it do your assignment for you. You will end up having issues. Instead, turn it. Make it into a study tool for your success. And that is key. This is about studying and your success. These are powerful tools. They should not be ignored. The idea where departments are trying to ban them and schools are trying to ban them, they're missing the point. These are really powerful tools to help you as a learner engage with the material. So I encourage you to use it, help yourself engage with the material, and you'll learn a lot more. Thank you, and have a great day.